I'm Richard Keat, Arizona LLC attorney who's formed over 9,400 Arizona LLCs. I formed the first LLC in Arizona the day the law became effective in October of 1992. I had my legal assistant waiting outside the door of the Arizona Corporation Commission. And when they opened the door, she went in and filed the first set of articles for the first LLC created in Arizona. Now, many times people will ask me, why should I form an LLC? Or they might say, I want to form a corporation. And even less often, they might ask, can I form a limited partnership? Well, it used to be in the old days, before LLCs were enacted in Arizona, the most common type of entity used by people was a corporation for a business and a limited partnership for entities that were going to own real estate. But when the LLC law became effective, it basically eliminated and made obsolete the corporation and the limited partnership, because the LLC was created to take the best characteristics of the corporation and the limited partnership and put them into the LLC, and then not have any of the bad characteristics of the corporation or the limited partnership. So now people form LLCs because they want to have an entity that's going to protect them from anything that might go wrong with the business or with the real estate if it's investing in real estate. Because if you own real estate or a business yourself and it's not in an entity, if anything goes wrong, then you can be sued and your life savings is at risk. So that's a bad thing. Now, when you have an LLC, if something goes wrong with the business or with the real estate, Arizona LLC law says that the owner of the LLC is not liable for the debts or obligations of the LLC. So that's why you want to have an LLC own your business or own your real estate, because you don't want to be sued if something goes wrong. Another asset protection benefit of an LLC is that in a good LLC state like Arizona, Wyoming, Delaware, and Nevada, the laws of those states have something called the charging order statute. And that's a statute that says that if somebody sues the owner and gets a judgment against the owner, that the creditor cannot get any of the assets that are inside the LLC and can't force a sale of the LLC. So that means if somebody sues you and gets a judgment against you, they can serve that judgment on the LLC. It's called a charging order, and that charging order tells the LLC that it can't distribute any money or property to you. So what you're going to do is you're just going to retain all the income and assets that are inside the LLC until that creditor problem goes away. Now, consider the difference between a good state like Arizona LLCs and also Wyoming and Delaware LLCs and Nevada, because in those states they have the charging order. But if you form an LLC in a bad state like California that does not have the charging order protection, if somebody sues you and gets a judgment, say, you owe $25,000 and they sue you, get a judgment for $25,000. If you don't have the money to pay that right away, they can actually sell your California LLC that owns the $1 million piece of real estate, and they can sell it at an auction to the highest bidder, and your $1 million LLC is gone forever. Because one of the bad things about non-charging order states is that it allows the creditor to sell the LLC owned by the person who owes money to the creditor. Unlike in Arizona, where our LLC law says that the creditor can only serve a charging order on the LLC. You can't get access to the LLC's assets and can't force the sale of the LLC. Well, there are sometimes people who want to form a limited partnership, and we sometimes do that because they insist on it. Now, the limited partnership is really obsolete now in Arizona, and I think all the other states, because the LLC was created to replace the limited partnership and replace the corporation, because the corporation and the LLC both have some bad characteristics. And when people created the LLC years ago, they wanted to do away with the bad characteristics of the LLC and the limited partnership, and that's how we got the LLC. But sometimes people insist for whatever reason. Normally, the most common reason people do an LLP is they're Canadian citizens, because Canadian citizens are actually taxed at a higher rate on income that comes from an Arizona LLC or a US LLC, and the Canadians are taxed at a lower Canadian tax rate when the income from a U.S. limited partnership generates that income. So when we have people that want to form a limited partnership, we're happy to do that. But realistically, it's better, cheaper, and easier to form an LLC, because one of the problems with a limited partnership is that you have to have one partner known as a general partner. And Arizona law says that the general partner is 100% liable for the debts and obligations of the partnership. So that means typically what we do when we do form a limited partnership is we create an LLC that's going to be a 1% general partner. And so that LLC may have unlimited liability for the debts and obligations of the partnership, but it doesn't have any assets. So if somebody does sue the LP and they get a judgment, they can go after the general partner, but it only owns 1% and it doesn't have any assets. So the creditor doesn't get anything. But in the long run, the limited partnership is really obsolete, and I would only use it if it was a Canadian citizen who wants to form a limited partnership to reduce their U.S. income tax under Canadian tax law. Sometimes people ask me, when should I start my LLC? And its answer is simple. You want to start your LLC before you engage in any business activity. Because remember, the reason you form the LLC is you don't want to get sued if something goes wrong. So let's say you start your business today, but you don't form an LLC. Now you got Homer Simpson. You hired Homer to draft the cars that's going to be doing the taxi services for your business. So Homer gets in the vehicle and he's driving one of the passengers and he's at fault. He causes a car accident and kills or injures somebody. Now you can be sued because Homer was working for you when he caused that car accident. And that illustrates the reason why you never want to operate a business unless you do it through an LLC, because what you should have done before you hired Homer was you should have formed an LLC, and that LLC should have hired Homer. Then when Homer was driving, he was working for the LLC and wasn't working for you, and that's why you wouldn't be sued. Homer would get sued because he was the one driving the car, but also the person who was injured in the car accident would be suing the LLC because Homer was working for the LLC when he caused the accident. So if you have questions about forming or operating an Arizona LLC, we're always happy to answer. We don't charge to answer questions. And if you do want to schedule a free office phone or Zoom meeting, just go to our online calendar and book a free appointment.